In every war, the first sign of trouble isn't the explosion. It's the silence before it. This isn't a story about love. It's about awareness, discipline, and what happens when a soldier's instincts kick in at home. You're watching Terran Tales, where every story has a plan and every plan has consequences. This is the first crack, part one. It started with a look, not a long one, not even one she meant me to see. We were at a friend's cookout, summer heat making the air heavy, kids darting through sprinklers, music spilling out of a Bluetooth speaker on the deck. The kind of summer day where the smell of charcoal and barbecue soaks into your clothes and you lose track of time. She was across the yard, laughing with a group of neighbors. I was talking with a buddy about an upcoming range day when my eyes drifted. And there it was, her eyes lingering on a man I didn't recognize. Tall, clean-cut, mid-40s, holding a plate in one hand, a beer in the other. It wasn't just a glance, it was an extra beat, just long enough to register in my head. Then came the smirk, that slow, private smile I hadn't seen aimed at me in a long time. I didn't say a thing. I've been in the military long enough to know that reacting too early gets you killed in the field, or in marriage. But my gut knew. That sixth sense that kept me alive overseas told me, this isn't random. When you've spent years in uniform, you develop a feel for the smallest changes in the atmosphere. A shift in wind before a sandstorm. A pause in the jungle noises before an ambush. The way a local looks at you before something bad happens. This felt the same. It wasn't just that she smiled, it was how she smiled. There was softness in it, familiarity, the kind of look you give someone when you're already comfortable letting them pass the walls. I took a sip of my beer and kept my face neutral. Inside, I'd already marked the time, the date, the location. I was running a mental log like I'd done on patrol, documenting events before they became patterns. She didn't notice. She laughed at something one of the women said, tucking her hair behind her ear. The guy she'd smiled at moved closer to the group, said something, and they all laughed. I didn't know him, and I know everyone in our circle. That was the first ping in my mental radar. New contact, unknown intentions. The rest of the afternoon passed like any other barbecue. We ate too much food. I lost 2 games of cornhole to a guy who could probably go pro, and I let the beer stay cold in my hand instead of in my stomach. When we left, she was chatty in the truck, talking about how much she'd missed everyone, how we should host something soon. I nodded, smiled, asked questions, but my mind was running background calculations. Where had she met that man? Why hadn't she introduced me? Why the smile? That night, we unloaded the cooler, put away leftovers, and settled onto the couch. She scrolled through her phone, not aimlessly, focused. Her thumbs moved fast, her eyes locked on the screen. When I leaned over to see, she tilted it slightly away. A small movement, barely there. But in combat, small movements can mean the difference between spotting an enemy or walking into an ambush. I didn't press. I've learned that the worst thing you can do when you suspect trouble is announce that you suspect trouble. It changes the other person's behavior, makes them cautious. If she thought I was watching, she'd start covering her tracks. I wanted her to think I was exactly what I'd been for years, her dependable husband, predictable, trusting, easy to fool. In bed, I lay awake long after she drifted off. I replayed the look, the smile, the way her phone stayed glued to her hand all night, and I made a decision. From this point forward, I was on recon, silent, patient, watching, just like I'd done in places where one wrong move meant you didn't come home. Over the next week, I started to notice other cracks. The late arrivals home from work events. The new perfume. Not strong, just enough to be noticed. The extra time spent getting ready, even on days she'd told me she had boring meetings. The old her would have shared details without me even asking. She used to tell me who said what at the office, which coworker annoyed her, which client made her day easier. Now, her answers were vague. It was fine. Same old stuff. One night, she came home later than usual. Said she'd gone out for drinks with some colleagues. Her hair was a little messy, lipstick faintly smudged. I smiled, kissed her on the cheek, told her I'd kept dinner warm. Inside, I noted the exact time she walked through the door, 9:47 p.m. Later, I'd find a way to see if that time matched her story. When you're in the military, you learn how to live in two realities at once. There's the surface, where you smile, talk, laugh, keep the mood light. And there's the undercurrent, where you observe, record, and never stop reading the terrain. That's where I was now. Smiling on the surface, studying underneath. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for yet, but I knew this. If there was an enemy in the wire, I was going to find them. And when I did, I'd be ready. It's strange how quickly normal can change. One day you're moving through your life on autopilot. The next, you're listening for the faintest footsteps in the dark. After that cookout, after the look, I started noticing the little things. And once you start noticing, you can't stop. The phone was the first change. It went from sitting on the kitchen counter while she cooked to being glued to her palm like it was part of her. I'd walk into the room and, without fail, the screen would go dark. Not the natural fade from inactivity. No, this was a deliberate thumb tap, immediate, a shutdown, like she was cutting power to a secure radio before the enemy could intercept the signal. The more I saw it, the more I knew it wasn't random. People guard what they don't want discovered. In the field, that could be a weapons cache, intel documents, or a back-channel comms line. Here, it was her phone. The second change was her schedule. She'd been predictable for years. Work ended at 5 p.m. She'd get home by 5:30. We'd have dinner together most nights. But now, I might be late tonight, big project. Couple of us are grabbing drinks after work. Traffic's awful, don't wait up. Her voice was still warm, but there was a practiced smoothness to it, like someone running the same cover story on repeat. The first time, I took it at face value. The second time, I logged it mentally. By the third time, I was marking it like coordinates on a map. The third change was harder to quantify, but it hit the hardest. The way she looked at me. There was distance now. Her smiles didn't reach her eyes. Her touch felt absent. I'd put a hand on her back and feel her body tense before relaxing. She was halfway out the door in her mind, but still standing in my kitchen. And I knew from experience, whether in a war zone or a marriage, that once someone starts looking beyond you, they're already making plans you're not part of. That's when I decided the recon phase wasn't just a precaution, it was a necessity. In the service, you never launch an op without knowing the terrain. The man who charges in blind isn't brave, he's dead. I needed eyes and ears, and I needed them in places she didn't even know I was looking. Step one was low-tech, observation. I started keeping mental notes of her comings and goings, when she left, when she came back, what she was wearing, whether her makeup looked freshly applied or worn down, how her mood shifted from morning to evening. I didn't confront her. I didn't act cold or suspicious. If anything, I turned the warmth up a notch. Why? Because when people think you're comfortable, they drop their guard. In combat, the most dangerous enemy is the one you think isn't looking at you. Step two was tech. I bought a small, encrypted voice recorder, the kind that could run for hours without needing to be touched. One went in my truck, another in the den where she liked to make her private calls. I upgraded our home security cameras under the pretense of rising break-ins in the neighborhood. 2 extra ones in the garage and the driveway. She didn't even question it. She'd seen the posts on the community board. Step 3 was data. I called our phone provider and switched us to a plan that gave me detailed call and text logs. No content, that'd be illegal. But times, dates, numbers dialed, that's fair game. Every night after she went to bed, I'd log in and check. At first there was nothing glaring, but I knew how patterns worked. They take time to form, and more time to expose. I even adjusted my own schedule to test her reactions. I'm working late tonight, I'd tell her. Or, I'm heading to the range with the guys. I wasn't. I'd park 2 streets over and watch the house. Sometimes nothing happened. Sometimes, I'd see her come home, change clothes, and leave again. The first time it happened, My pulse quickened like I was back on Overwatch, watching movement in the distance. She left at 7:15 p.m., wearing jeans and a low-cut top I hadn't seen in years. She didn't take her purse, just her phone and keys. When she came back 2 hours later, her hair was a little messy, her lipstick faintly worn. She looked around before unlocking the door. I sat on the couch, pretending to watch TV. She smiled when she saw me, kissed my cheek, said traffic had been bad. I kissed her back and added, 7:15 p.m. departure, 9:22 p.m. return, to my mental log. By the third week, I was running this like a proper operation. I had a folder on my laptop, hidden, encrypted, with times, dates, screenshots of call logs, and short clips from the garage camera. I wasn't jumping to conclusions. I was building a case. Because here's the thing most guys get wrong. They catch their wife cheating, they storm in with the evidence, and they think that's the win. It's not. The real win is making sure that when she goes, she doesn't take the house, the pension, and half your paycheck with her. That takes time, patience, discipline. One night, I got my first major break. She was in the shower, her phone buzzing on the nightstand. I glanced at it. Message from Evan. Work. Same time tomorrow? Can't stop thinking about last night. I didn't take the phone, didn't scroll, didn't breathe any heavier. I just looked at the name, memorized the number. Then I slid it back exactly as it was, sat in the chair, and by the time she came out wrapped in a towel, I was scrolling through the news on my own phone like nothing had happened. She kissed me on the top of my head and went to get dressed. After that, I didn't just track her, I tracked him. A quick search of the number through a paid lookup service gave me a name, an address, and an employer. Mid-level manager at a marketing firm. Married, 2 kids. That detail made me smile, not out of joy, but because it meant there were more moving parts. And more moving parts meant more opportunities for her to make mistakes. Inside, I was already running the next phase in my head. Find out everything I can about Evan. Confirm the relationship beyond doubt. Secure my assets, so even if she got the best lawyer in town, her hands would come up empty. Then, and only then, execute. The shift had happened. She thought she was living in a safe zone, but I'd already marked the battlefield. And this time, I'd be the one setting the trap. In the military, recon isn't just about looking around. It's about knowing. Every street, every door, every person in the AO. If you know the terrain better than your enemy, you own the fight before it even starts. That's where I was now. Phase 1, suspicion. Phase 2, observation. Phase 3, deep recon. The number in her phone was my first breadcrumb. Evan, work. I already knew the name was a lie. If he worked with her, I'd have met him by now. She'd have mentioned him at least once in all the office gossip she used to spill like clockwork. So I paid for a skip trace, the kind real estate investors use to find absentee owners or bounty hunters use to find runners. It took about 30 seconds. Evan Myers, 43, mid-level marketing manager, lives across town in a cookie-cutter subdivision with his wife and 2 kids. A wedding anniversary picture from Facebook told me he'd been married 12 years. A work bio said he specialized in strategic brand development. An alumni page showed he played lacrosse in college, and every single piece of it told me one thing. He wasn't the type to risk his whole life for a fling unless he thought he could get away with it. That worked in my favor. Men like him get sloppy. I built a dossier, photos, addresses, vehicle make, model, and plate, work hours, LinkedIn updates. I wasn't going to use any of it yet. This was for pattern recognition, the same thing we do when tracking a high-value target overseas. Meanwhile, I moved on the second prong of the op, asset security. First move, a new checking account at a credit union 2 towns over, the kind that doesn't share account alerts unless you opt in. I had my paycheck rerouted there. To her, nothing changed. She saw the balance in our joint account stay steady because I set up a recurring transfer to mimic my old deposit schedule. Second move, the truck. It had been in my name for years, but I signed the title over to my LLC. On paper, it was now a business asset, not marital property. Third move, investments. I liquidated one account entirely and rolled the funds into a trust under my brother's name. He knew the deal. We'd done this kind of asset sheltering before when a buddy went through a messy split. I kept receipts for everything. Not because I planned to show them to her, but because in court, paper beats pity every single time. She'd been distracted enough not to notice. If she did notice, she didn't say a word. While the financial side was locking down, I widened my surveillance net. The garage cam picked up 2 instances of her leaving the house in workout gear and returning hours later with her hair down and makeup redone. The voice recorder in the den caught a short but telling exchange. "Can't talk right now." "Yeah, tonight works." "Same place?" It was enough to confirm the pattern. Late evenings, vague locations, short calls. I even staged a little test, told her I had an overnight training session out of state, booked a cheap motel an hour away, and left my truck in the long-term parking lot at a regional airport. From there, I took an Uber back to within 2 blocks of our house and sat in the dark with a thermos of coffee, watching. At 8:06 p.m., Evan's SUV rolled up. He parked 2 houses down, walked up our driveway, and disappeared inside. I didn't storm in, didn't kick the door, didn't blow my cover. I just let the cameras in the garage and living room capture every frame. At 11:47 p.m., he left. She locked the door behind him, turned out the lights, and went upstairs. The next morning, I made her pancakes, asked if she'd slept well. She smiled, said yes, kissed my cheek, and went upstairs to get ready for work. She thought she was untouchable. She didn't know that by the time we got to court, she'd have less leverage than a broken rifle. Meanwhile, I began running checks on my own legal position. My divorce attorney was a former JAG officer, the kind of guy who could spot a weak case in 30 seconds. I told him I wasn't ready to file yet. "I'm still in recon," I said. He nodded. "Bring me what you've got when you're ready to move, and make sure it's airtight." So I kept collecting. Every suspicious departure was noted. Every call log was screenshotted. Every bank charge that didn't line up with her story was filed in a neat digital folder. I was building a war chest of evidence, and like any war chest, it wasn't meant to be flaunted. It was meant to end the fight before it started. The funny thing was, the more I pulled back emotionally, the more she seemed at ease. She laughed more, she was friendlier. She thought my extra work hours meant she could operate with complete freedom. What she didn't realize was that I was giving her rope, and she was tying the noose herself. The recon phase was nearly complete. I knew who he was. I knew where they met. I knew when they met. And most importantly, I had a growing record of marital assets being used to facilitate the affair, the very thing that could nuke her claims in court. In the field, there's a saying, amateurs talk tactics, professionals talk logistics. I wasn't just looking to catch her, I was setting up the supply lines for the final operation, the legal one. By the time she realized the war had started, it would already be over. In any mission, there comes a point when you stop gathering intel and start fortifying your position. In combat, it means sandbags, barriers, and fallback points. In marriage, at least in this marriage, it meant making damn sure that when the shooting started, my side was the only one with ammo. The recon was solid now. I knew the players, the schedule, the methods. But knowing isn't enough. You have to make it impossible for the enemy to breach your lines. That meant one thing: financial firewall. First, I went after liquidity. Cash is the most exposed part of any man's assets in a divorce. The courts love to split it, and her lawyer would aim for it like a sniper zeroing in on an officer. So I bled our joint account slowly. Not enough for her to notice a dramatic drop. Just enough that over a few weeks, thousands migrated into my new private account at the credit union. Every dollar was logged. Every transfer had a cover. Reimbursing a friend for a loan, paying a contractor for work on the cabin, business expenses for the LLC. If she ever did look, she'd see a busy but normal financial life. Next came the big ticket items. The truck was already under the LLC now, safe. But the cabin up north? That was exposed. So I put a quitclaim deed through, transferring the title into the trust my brother managed. No money exchanged, just a legal transfer. He and I had a written agreement that once the divorce was over, it would transfer right back. It wasn't hiding assets. It was protecting them, like securing supplies before a siege. Then, the pension. My service years meant a military retirement was on the horizon, and I knew damn well she'd aim for it. So I booked a consultation with a specialist in military divorce law. He told me something that made me grin. If you can prove financial misconduct during the marriage, using marital funds for an affair, you can cut her out of your retirement entirely. And I had the beginnings of that proof sitting in my encrypted folder. The key here was timing. In war, timing can turn a firefight into a rout. In divorce, it can turn a 50-50 split into her walking away with nothing but her clothes. If I moved too soon, she could get her hands on money before the court locked it down. If I waited too long, she could move assets herself. I decided on a hybrid strategy. Lock down what mattered most immediately, but leave the appearance of normalcy. That appearance was critical. At home, I played the part of the same husband I'd been for years. I'd ask her about her day. I'd fix things around the house. We even went out to dinner once. Her idea, not mine. She smiled across the table, phone face down next to her hand. I smiled back, knowing I was weeks away from taking every weapon out of her arsenal. Meanwhile, the surveillance kept running. The garage cam caught Evan's SUV again, this time in daylight. The voice recorder in the den picked up her giggling, telling him, "I swear he has no idea." It's like I'm living two lives, no idea. That line replayed in my head later that night as I moved another $5,000 into the credit union account. Every op needs a backup plan. Mine was to have a rapid deployment move ready in case she got suspicious. A way to drain or lock down everything in under 24 hours. I prepped a folder of signed transfer forms for the last of my investments. I had a line ready to the bank manager for a same-day lock on the joint account. I even had a pre-written letter to the base legal office to freeze any changes to my retirement pay allocation. If she tried to hit me with a surprise attack, I could close the gates before she made it up the driveway. The deeper I got into it, the more I realized how similar this was to my deployments. The battlefield was smaller. The weapons were subtler. But the principles? Identical. Secure the perimeter. Control the supply lines. Have multiple fallback points. One night, as she was at yoga, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and checked my progress. Joint account. Nearly empty without looking empty. Major assets. Secured under the trust or LLC. Retirement. Paperwork ready to block her claim. Evidence. Growing daily. Now backed up to 2 encrypted drives and an off-site cloud account under a fake name. It was the kind of operational readiness that would have made my old CO proud. The funny thing? She seemed happier than she had in months. Lighter. Like she thought she'd finally outsmarted me. And maybe that was the best part, because in a few more weeks, the operation would move into its final phase. And when it did, she wouldn't just lose the war. She'd never even know it had started until the gavel came down. A defensive position is good. A fortified position is better. But a fortified position with artillery? That's how you end a war before it starts. The financial firewall was up. Assets were safe. She couldn't touch my pension without a fight. Now I needed the ammo. The kind of proof that wouldn't just show the affair, but would show she funded it with marital assets. Because that was the kill shot. The voice recorders and security cams had already given me plenty of smoke. I wanted the fire. That meant tracking where she went, who she saw, and how our money was being used to make it happen. I didn't want whispers. I didn't want, he said, she said. I wanted hard, documented, verifiable truth that would stand up in court and survive any cross-examination. Step 1. Outside intel. There's an old rule we used overseas. If you want the truth, get eyes that aren't yours. Your own bias can make you see what you want to see. An outside set of eyes sees only what's there. That's where the PI came in. I found him through a former military buddy. This wasn't some trench coat cliché with a cheap camera. This guy had a resume that included counter-surveillance for corporate security firms and a reputation for never, ever botching the chain of evidence. We met in a diner 2 towns over. Neutral ground, neutral faces. I slid a manila envelope across the table. Her photo, her work schedule, best clips from my own recordings. He flipped through them slowly, his expression unreadable. When he looked up, his voice was quiet but firm. "I'll have something for you within a week. No pitch, no brag, just a promise." Step 2. Parallel observation. In the military, you don't rely solely on one intel source. If a UAV says there's movement at Grid 7, you still want ground confirmation before you send a squad in. So while the PI worked, I ran my own low-level tailing. 2 nights in, she said she had late meetings at work. At 6 p.m., I was parked across from her office. She came out not with a coworker, but with Evan. Tall, grinning, wearing the kind of confidence only a man breaking rules seems to have. They got into his SUV and drove to a boutique hotel downtown, not a family vacation spot, the kind of place with curtains always drawn and guests who don't give their real names. I didn't follow them in, didn't need to. The PI's long lens captured them walking into the lobby, hands brushing, lips close. They stayed 2 hours. When they came back out, they were laughing like teenagers sneaking out of a prom after-party. Step 3. Financial tie-in. When the PI's report landed in my inbox, it was the kind of document that could drop a man to his knees. Dates, times, high-resolution photos, and most importantly, receipts. Dinner for 2 on our joint credit card. Gas charges on our bank account the same nights she was supposedly at yoga. A $180 silk scarf from a boutique, purchased with our card, appearing in one of the surveillance shots wrapped around her neck while she was with him. It was exactly what my attorney had told me to hunt. Proof that marital funds were being used to facilitate the affair. Because in our state, that's financial misconduct. And judges, they don't like that. I cataloged it all. Each receipt matched to a date and time from the PI's log. Each photo labeled and time-stamped. Even the gas receipts went in. A pattern is more powerful than any single event. I built a master binder, printed, tabbed, cross-referenced. 1 copy went into my safe. 2 encrypted digital versions were stored. 1 on a drive in my desk, 1 on a cloud server under a fake name. Step 4. Emotional camouflage. The more proof I had, the calmer I became. It's amazing how steady your breathing gets when you know you hold every card. She could lie, bluff, even cry. But the evidence didn't care about feelings. One night she was in the den, laughing softly into her phone. I heard her say, "He has no idea. He's just comfortable. He'll never see it coming." I almost smiled, if only she knew. By this point, the operation wasn't about if I'd win. It was about when I'd pull the trigger. I let her keep moving freely. I didn't tighten the leash. I wanted her to get comfortable enough to make more mistakes. Because every dollar she spent, every mile she drove to see him, every second she used my roof as cover, it was all another bullet in my legal magazine. The difference between a fool and a strategist is patience. A fool reacts. A strategist waits until the enemy is exactly where he wants them, surrounded, low on options, convinced they still have a chance, before he closes in. That's where I was now, and she was walking herself into the kill zone without even realizing it. In the field, when you have the high ground and the enemy is already exposed, you don't rush in guns blazing. You let them keep walking into the open. Every step they take without realizing you're sighted in is another step they can't take back. That's where I was now. I had the terrain advantage. I had her pattern mapped. I had more than enough proof to drop the hammer, but I wasn't done. I wanted her so far out on that ledge that when I cut the rope, there was no way back. Step 1. Remove resistance. People cheat in 2 ways, with secrecy or with access. I'd already destroyed the secrecy with my surveillance. Now I was going to feed the access. I started working late, training at the range more, grabbing drinks with the guys after work. She lit up every time I told her I'd be gone. No suspicion, no fear, Just the kind of relief you see on someone's face when they think the coast is clear. Step 2. Create comfort. She stopped hiding things as carefully. Her phone sat out more often. She'd text while sitting next to me on the couch, screen tilted slightly. Not as much as before, but enough to tell me she thought I wasn't paying attention. Once, she even took a call in the kitchen while I was upstairs. The recorder in the den caught her saying, "He's barely home," and he didn't confront her. Not yet. A good soldier doesn't strike until the target is clear. What came next wasn't rage. It was reconnaissance. Part 2. The shift drops next. Subscribe to Terran Tales and see how patience becomes power.